Friday, your title points to, is not a random day, because some days arrive carrying weight before anything visible has happened. You have already felt that kind of weight in the quiet of a room where the lamp is on, the phone is face down, and the rest of the house keeps breathing as if nothing is changing. Your chest knows the difference before your mind does, and your hands know it too when they stay still over a table, a Bible, or a cup that has gone cold. This is not the language of panic, it is the language of recognition, the kind that settles over a person when life is being arranged in a way he did not plan. C.S. Lewis understood that God often works in the places where ordinary expectations break, where the polished surface of a day cracks and something deeper is already moving beneath it. You may think you are waiting for Friday, but Friday may already be waiting for you. What feels delayed is sometimes only being prepared. What looks small can be the first sign of a door that has not yet opened all the way. You have lived long enough to know that not every interruption is a mistake, and not every silence is empty. There are mornings when the kettle clicks off in the kitchen and the sound feels louder than usual, as if the room itself is listening. There are afternoons when you stand in the doorway holding your shoes or your keys and feel that familiar pause in the body. The one that says something important is near, even if no one else notices. In those moments, the old way of reading life tells you to dismiss the feeling, to call it imagination, to keep moving as if your spirit had not already leaned forward. But the deeper way is different, because it knows that God can use the ordinary edge of a week to begin an extraordinary turning. You were not made to treat every stirring as noise. You were made to discern the difference between disruption and invitation. The Friday in your title carries that tension, and it asks you to stay awake long enough to see what kind of mercy is arriving through it. You have been taught by many disappointments to brace yourself before hope appears, and that habit shows in the body before it ever reaches the mouth. Your shoulders hold what your words no longer want to carry, and your breathing becomes shallow when you try to protect yourself from expecting too much. A message left unanswered, a door that stayed closed, a plan that slipped away from your hands, all of it can train a person to live with lowered eyes. Yet the deeper truth is that the waiting itself has been shaping you, not to make you smaller, but to make you ready for a larger arrival. Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment. C.S. Lewis wrote with the hard tenderness of someone who knew that joy and ache often come together, and that the soul is sometimes most honest when it is strained between them. This is why your heart keeps noticing the same strange pressure, as if something in the unseen has begun to lean toward you. It is not weakness to feel it. It is awareness. And awareness is often the first mercy before the actual answer appears. You may have looked at the calendar and seen only an ordinary Friday, but your spirit has already sensed that ordinary is not the whole story. The old identity wants to call this exaggeration, wants to reduce every holy nudge to mood, tiredness, or wishful thinking. Yet the room where you are sitting, with its chair pushed slightly back and its light falling across the floor, can become the place where discernment begins to outgrow fear. When God begins to move, he does not always announce himself with thunder. Sometimes he arrives through a sentence, a memory, a delayed clarity, or a pressure that will not leave your chest alone. That is why this kind of message matters, because it teaches you to honor the inner alarm that is not really alarm at all, but attention. The danger is not that you feel too much. The danger is that you explain away what was meant to guide you. And when that happens, you can miss the very kindness that was coming close enough to change your week. You have probably noticed that certain moments in life feel heavier when nobody else in the room can see why. The chair by the window, the sink full of dishes, the half-open drawer, the envelope that has not been opened yet, all of them can become witnesses to an unseen turning. You move through them with the same body you used yesterday, but inwardly something is shifting, and the shift is not dramatic enough for a crowd, yet strong enough to alter the way you breathe. That is how preparation often feels, quiet on the outside, insistent on the inside. The world tells you to wait for proof before you respond, but the soul is often asked to respond before proof arrives. If you learn that rhythm, you will not be shocked when Friday comes carrying more than its name. You will recognize that the day was never merely a slot on the calendar. It was a threshold, and thresholds are never explained well by people who only count visible things. There are signs that do not shout, and the mind trained by disappointment often passes right over them. A pause before opening the door, a sudden memory while washing a plate, a stillness that settles over the car before you turn the key. These are the kinds of moments that can carry more meaning than 1,000 loud promises. They do not force themselves on you. They invite you. They ask whether you are willing to notice that your life is being readjusted from the inside out. This is where C. And Lewis feels so close to your own experience because he refused to flatten the spiritual life into slogans and instead allowed mystery to remain real. He knew that the holy can be severe and gentle in the same breath. So if your Friday has been feeling charged, do not hurry to strip it of meaning. Let it remain charged long enough for wisdom to speak. Let the pressure become interpretation, and let interpretation become peace. You may be standing at the edge of a season you once begged for, yet it still does not look like you expected. That is one of the hardest forms of faith, because it asks you to trust not the shape you imagined, but the hand that is shaping the outcome. The sink may still need washing, the message may still be delayed, the room may still feel too small, yet something in you has already begun to know that the old pattern cannot govern you forever. There is a difference between being stuck and being held in a place where growth is happening below the surface. The surface looks still. The roots are working. The body often feels that hidden work as restlessness, longing, or quiet exhaustion, and it can be tempting to call that failure. It is not failure. It is the ache of becoming, and becoming is often least visible just before the change becomes undeniable. Your Friday may be carrying exactly that kind of hidden labor. You do not need to force meaning onto every detail, because forced meaning is fragile. What you need is the steadier recognition that some days gather significance the way clouds gather rain, slowly enough to be missed and surely enough to matter. In the kitchen, with the afternoon light on the counter and the sound of a spoon against a glass, you can feel how the ordinary world keeps going while your inner world is quietly rearranging itself. That rearrangement can be unsettling because it threatens the old bargains you made with control. But it can also be holy because it reveals that your life is not sealed inside your own predictions. Something larger is at work. Something wiser is near. And if Friday is the edge of that nearness, then your task is not to master it. Your task is to recognize it. Recognition is sometimes the first form of obedience. If even one of these signs has landed in you, type 888 in the comments and come back to me. Let that small act mark the moment you stopped dismissing the pressure and started honoring it. The number is not magic. It is a sign of quiet confirmation, a way of saying that you noticed what was trying to reach you. Write it because agreement matters and because your own attention deserves to be named. Come back to me after you write it, because the thread is not finished yet. There is more to see than the first tremor of recognition, and what comes next will make the shape of this Friday clearer than it was before. Some things only become visible after the first sign has already been received, and that is why the waiting feels different now. The same hallway, the same clock, the same phone resting silent on the table, yet your attention no longer belongs to the old fear alone. It is as if a window has been opened inside you, and the air has changed. You can feel that change in the body when the shoulders ease a little, when the jaw unclenches, when the breath moves lower than it was moving before. This is not certainty about every detail. It is the beginning of trust. The world often asks for proof before peace, but faith receives peace and then learns to interpret the proof. C.S. Lewis lived inside that tension, and he wrote as someone who knew that longing itself can be a clue. Your longing is not an accident. It may be pointing toward a Friday that carries more than routine. The thing you are sensing is not meant to trap you in suspense. It is meant to make you attentive. There is a difference between obsession and discernment, and your spirit knows the difference even when your mind confuses them. Obsession tightens, discernment clarifies. One makes the room smaller, the other makes it truer. When you sit alone and the silence feels fuller than usual, that may be the moment when clarity begins to form in the unseen places you rarely visit. You do not need to panic about the unknown. You only need to remain present long enough for the unknown to speak in a voice you can actually hear. Friday may be the day when the voice becomes unmistakable, but the listening starts now. You have learned how to survive disappointment, and survival has its own kind of intelligence. It teaches you to lower expectations, to keep one foot in caution, to prepare for the possibility that nothing will come of the hope you carried. But survival is not the final shape of your life. There comes a point when the heart is asked to risk more than self-protection can allow. That risk may feel like standing at the sink after everyone else has gone to bed, hearing the refrigerator hum, and realizing that you cannot keep calling every ache a coincidence. It may feel like looking at a blank page and understanding that the next sentence of your life will not be written by fear. You are being invited toward a larger honesty. Not every tension is a warning. Some tensions are birth pains, and birth pains do not always look beautiful while they are happening. The significance of this Friday is not that it will solve everything in one motion, because life rarely unfolds that neatly. The significance is that it may expose what has been hidden in you, including the courage you did not know was still intact. There is a strong and quiet mercy in exposure when it is guided by God, because what is revealed is not revealed to shame you. It is revealed to free you from confusion. The old interpretation says, your delay means loss. The new interpretation says, your delay may have been protection, refinement, or preparation. You can already feel how different those meanings are in the body. One drains you, the other steadies you. One tells you to shrink, the other tells you to stand still and wait for the right unveiling. That unveiling may begin on a Friday, but its roots are deeper than a day. You may not have words for what you feel, yet your body has been writing the sentence all week. It shows up in the way you look twice at the calendar, in the way your hand hovers before you answer a call, in the way a room feels charged when nothing visible has changed. These are not meaningless habits. They are signs that your inner life is awake enough to notice a movement before your circumstances can explain it. The temptation is to rush past the sensation and call it nothing. But wisdom often begins by refusing to rush. Wisdom sits with the pressure, names the contrast, and asks what kind of fruit could grow from this discomfort. That is how a future begins to speak before it fully arrives. If the image I have been walking you through has landed in a place you cannot fully explain, type the words, "I see it," in the comments and come back to me. Let the recognition become permanent in your own record, not because the words have power by themselves, but because honesty does. Something in you has already seen enough to respond. Write it plainly, as an act of agreement. Then return here, because the movement is not finished. What you have recognized is only the beginning of the deeper turning. The next part asks for even more honesty, and you are ready for it. The turning does not always begin with thunder. Sometimes it begins with a strange calm that arrives after the first resistance has worn itself thin. You sit in the same chair, under the same ceiling, but the atmosphere around your thoughts has changed enough that you can no longer pretend nothing is happening. The light on the wall seems softer, the sound outside seems farther away, and your breathing has the slow seriousness of someone who knows a threshold is near. This is the kind of moment C.S. Lewis understood well, because he kept returning to the truth that the visible world is not the final layer of reality. What you feel in this pause may be the edge of a larger mercy. It may be correction. It may be preparation. It may be God returning you to a truth you had nearly forgotten. The important thing is that you do not flatten it into ordinary distraction. Something deeper is asking to be noticed. You have spent enough days trying to explain yourself to the wrong things. You explained your tiredness to people who wanted performance. You explained your silence to people who misunderstood depth. You explained your caution to people who only respected speed. Now, a more honest voice is rising inside you, and it does not need applause to be true. It only needs room. Room in the evening, room in the car before you drive away, room in the pause after reading a line that feels too close to ignore. When room appears, the body often knows it first. The shoulders loosen, the stomach settles, and the heart stops bracing for impact long enough to hear what has been there all along. That is not small. That is a beginning. There is a sacredness in not rushing the revelation. If you rush it, you try to control the shape of it. If you receive it, you let it disclose itself in the order that is right for you. A Friday can be just a Friday if you insist on surface meaning alone, but it can also become a hinge if you are willing to listen beyond the noise. The hinge does not look impressive. It turns quietly. It carries weight without announcing it, yet everything moves because of it. Your life has such hinges, and this week may be one of them. The old self wants dramatic proof. The wiser self wants clear presence. One is noisy, the other is solid, and solid things last longer than adrenaline ever does. You are not being asked to manufacture faith. You are being asked to notice what is already rising from somewhere deeper than mood. Maybe the answer will come through a conversation, maybe through a pause, maybe through a door that opens after a long delay. Or maybe the answer is not an event at all, but a new way of seeing what has been around you the whole time. That possibility matters because it means you do not have to wait passively for life to happen to you. You can become awake to the way life is already speaking. That waking is a kind of return, and return is often what God loves most to do. He brings you back to yourself, back to clarity, back to the place where fear no longer gets the final word. This is the point where the metaphor you have been walking begins to move, like a river that looked still only because you had not yet watched it long enough. The current is there now, and you can feel it in the way your attention keeps returning to the same line, the same pressure, the same Friday. If that recognition has been landing in you, type the words "Esto desperto" in the comments and come back to me. Let the phrase name what has happened inside you. You are not claiming perfection. You are naming awareness. That difference matters. Awareness is the gate. What comes through it is deeper than fear, and you're already standing near it. You have now crossed from noticing into participating, and that changes the texture of the whole message. The silence does not feel empty in the same way it did before. It feels charged with possibility, and possibility can be its own discipline when you have spent years settling for less. The room around you is still the room around you, yet your spirit is no longer satisfied with merely surviving it. Something in you wants to answer. Something in you wants to say yes, without needing every detail first. That is why these moments are so delicate, because they ask you to let trust grow before visibility does. C.S. Lewis would have called this the serious play of the soul, the place where longing and reason meet, and neither one is asked to disappear. In that meeting place, you begin to sense that Friday is not just coming toward you. You are being prepared to meet it. There are many ways to resist preparation, and one of them is to treat every inner movement as if it were too fragile to matter. But the soul is not fragile when it is being tended. It becomes steady. It becomes clear. It becomes capable of receiving what once would have overwhelmed it. You can hear this in the way your thoughts slow down when you stop fighting the interpretation and let it settle. The body understands this before the mind does. The breath deepens. The face softens. The hands stop clenching around what they cannot control. That is how readiness often looks, even before the outcome arrives. Readiness is not noise. It is quiet alignment. The danger, of course, is that the old fear will return and try to rename the whole experience as overthinking. That voice is familiar, and it has worn many disguises. It calls caution wisdom when it is actually delay. It calls numbness peace when it is actually exhaustion. It calls control maturity when it is actually fear. But the life being formed in you is wiser than those disguises. It has learned that the truest things often arrive without spectacle. A changed heart rarely announces itself with trumpets. It often comes like a steady hand on the shoulder, or like a sentence that keeps echoing long after the speaker is gone. That is enough. Sometimes it is more than enough. You may still not know exactly what Friday will bring, and that is okay. Faith is not the absence of unknowns. It is the decision to remain open inside them. When that happens, the same calendar date that once felt ordinary can begin to feel like a meeting place, a convergence of expectation and surrender. You are no longer asking the day to perform for you. You are asking to be present when it speaks. That posture changes everything. It takes you out of panic and places you in discernment. It lets you notice what was always trying to become visible. And once you begin to live from that place, the old urgency loses some of its power. Someone came to mind while this was being said, someone quietly tired, secretly seeking, and carrying a posture nobody sees. Send this to them not as a recommendation, but as a delivery, because they may need the same recognition you needed. A message like this can arrive in the exact hour when a person is wondering whether anyone understands what they are carrying. You can be the hand that passes it on. You can be the quiet bridge, and in doing that, you participate in care without needing to explain the whole mystery. That is often how grace travels. It moves person to person with enough light to be recognized and enough tenderness not to overwhelm. There comes a stage when recognition is no longer enough on its own, because the heart wants to stand inside what it has seen. That is why the next movement matters so much. It is not a performance, it is a declaration. You have listened long enough to know that this is not about wishful thinking or religious excitement. It is about agreeing with what has been forming in you all along. The strongest confirmations are often the quietest ones, because they do not need to prove themselves by volume. They simply remain. And what remains begins to shape how you pray, how you wait, how you choose, and how you no longer accept the old story without question. You can feel the edge of that declaration in your chest right now, almost like a door that has not yet fully opened, but has already unlocked. The air is different near an unlocked door. It carries possibility, it carries movement, it carries the sense that what was sealed is not sealed forever. That is important because your life may have been treated too long, as if it were defined by what happened to you instead of what is being restored in you. The deeper work is always restoration. Not erasure, but restoration. Not denial, but return. And return begins when you agree with the truth that has been waiting for your voice. Before this closes, type the words "Eu sou escolhido" in the comments and come back to me. Do not write it as a wish. Write it as confirmation. Let your fingers do what your spirit has already begun to understand. This is not about claiming superiority. It is about recognizing assignment, identity, and the strange mercy of being called back to yourself. When you write it, you are not inventing a new self. You are accepting the one that was being revealed all along. Then return here, because the final movement is not far now, and it will gather all of this into one clear light. What has been happening through this message is not merely emotional, it is interpretive. You began with a Friday that seemed like a date, and by now that Friday has become a threshold of discernment, a place where fear and faith stood side by side until one of them could no longer dominate the room. The old reading of your life said delay, disappointment, and uncertainty. The new reading says preparation, protection, and quiet arrival. That is why the whole path matters, because it did not simply tell you to feel better, it helped you notice differently. You can almost see your own week now, as if it were a hallway, with more light at the far end than you first thought. The same door is there, but you are not the same person standing before it. There is comfort in realizing that your confusion was never proof of abandonment. It was often the sign that you were living in the space between what had ended and what had not yet fully begun. That space can feel thin and strange, like the moment before dawn, when everything is still dark but no longer fully night. In that kind of hour, your nerves can mistake transition for danger. Yet transition is not danger by itself. It is movement. It is the reshaping of perception. It is the quiet labor of God, bringing coherence where you only saw fragments. C.S. Lewis knew that the world is wider than what pain can currently explain, and that truth has been moving through these paragraphs like a steady current. You may notice now that your body feels different than it did at the beginning. The chest that was tight may be looser. The jaw that was held may be softer. The mind that kept reaching for control may finally be willing to rest its hands. That is the fruit of recognition when it is allowed to work all the way through a person. Not every burden disappears, but its authority weakens. Not every question is answered, but the panic around the question fades. You begin to understand that the holy often comes not by erasing complexity, but by giving you enough inward steadiness to stand inside it. That is a deep kind of mercy. So the Friday ahead is not merely a date to survive. It is a place to arrive awake. It may bring a conversation you did not script, a clarity you did not manufacture, or a quiet confirming moment that changes the way you interpret the rest of the month. It may also simply reveal that your heart has already shifted before the circumstances do. Either way, the movement is real. It has already begun. And once you see that, you stop asking whether your sensitivity was a mistake. You begin to honor it as a form of spiritual hearing. That is not small, that is a gift. You have been carried through ordinary things until they started to look like signs, and that is often how God works with a willing heart. The lamp, the chair, the phone, the hallway, the still cup, the unanswered message, all of it can become a map if you let meaning gather around it. What seemed scattered begins to align. What seemed late begins to make sense. What seemed hidden begins to speak. There is no need to force a dramatic ending onto that process, because the process itself is already the grace. You are being returned to a way of seeing that is less frantic and more true. And truth, once seen, does not leave you alone. You are confirmed. You are remembered. You are not late. You are not abandoned. You are being returned to what was never destroyed. Right now, across many places and many quiet rooms, others are receiving the same kind of recognition, and you are not outside that mercy. You are part of something that does not need to announce itself loudly to be real. Walk gently through attention. You need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.